Jimmy Butler returned to Miami on Tuesday night, but it was the team he left behind that was the story of the night as the Heat crushed the Warriors with Bam Adebayo leading the way. We break down the game and the vibes from Kaseya Center on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Before we jump into today's show, just a reminder, the next Locked On Heat watch party with our friends at the Toros in Coconut Grove, March 29th, for the Miami Heat's away game in Philadelphia against the Sixers. Come hang out with us, have some good food, drinks, and we can all hang out and watch some Miami Heat basketball, which has been more fun lately. Together, 2-game win streak. I have a big show for you today. We're going to be handing out some credit cookies, answering some listener questions, and I'm going to tell you just how important of a game this was for Bam Adebayo in a second. But first, we are recording this after the Heat beat the Warriors in the Jimmy Butler return game. Look, David, I think players could talk about this just being another game, no emotions, just want to go out there and treat this just like anything else. It is clear to me in this game that the Heat took this one personally, especially Bam Adebayo, who outscored Jimmy 23-11 and was matched up on him for most of the night. And then being at the arena for this, I haven't felt that alive since Game 7 of the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals. I really thought about it. I was like, when was the last time I felt like a game had this much riding on it? And I had to go back to Game 7 against the Celtics in 2023 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Just winner take all, right? And obviously that was a very different context. That the winner of that went to the NBA Finals. But in this game, it just felt, this is the one chance you get to play Jimmy Butler in this context with him coming back home, with the emotions still being very raw. Yeah. And it just felt like, you're not winning a trip to the finals, but you are playing and competing for bragging rights. And I think that was palpable in the arena. And I think that the Heat players and their team, they said all the right things. They said it was just another game and all these things. But I don't buy it because I watched that team play. They were more locked in than I've ever seen them played all season long.
This is probably the best game of the season. And I think from an emotional standpoint, it was clear that they were heavily invested in making sure that they won this game and making a statement to Jimmy that he made a mistake, that they're angry at him, that they're disappointed in his behavior, that he let them down. And I think that's fair. And what are players and adult men going to say in this kind, especially athletes who are, prompted almost constantly to put up a front and put up a facade of, no, these things don't bother me. How many times have we heard it's a business as they shrug off the fact that this team got traded or a team traded them? And we've heard later on stories about players saying, it was hard. It was difficult, as they were going about their daily business and all of a sudden they get a call from their agent or somebody, or they find out on ESPN that they've been traded. Like these kinds of things are disappointing.
Luka cried, when he found out, it was, and so did every Dallas Mavericks fan, but that strips away the facade, to your point, of this is only a business. If all of these players react the way that they react, and that's fine. We shouldn't expect them to be robots at the same time either. But the ability to then harness those emotions and then deploy them and use them to your advantage, that to me is what was impressive from the Heat tonight.
Yeah, it was. I was not expecting this. I really thought going into this game, and I know that the Warriors were without Steph Curry, and we should add that is an incredible caveat.
Whatever, I don't care.
Okay. Regardless,
it's right.
Miami played a phenomenal game. It does matter. Like in terms of the final outcome, who knows what it would have been like. But in terms of Miami's approach and how they were focused, I have not seen this team with this kind of laser-like precision and ability and just the emotional weight of everything, just being able to your point, harness and be able to use it as constructively and effectively as they did tonight. It was an impressive showing. And even when Golden State cut what was a sizable lead down to single digits,
20-8.
Miami found a way to
lead to 8 at the end of the third quarter, and then they go on that little spurt.
Yes, and Davion Mitchell, Bam Adebayo, Andrew Wiggins, Tyler Hero, like they all found ways to step up in different ways, and it was really impressive to see a team that has just thrown away a lot of games. Like during this 10-game losing streak, they found new ways to lose almost on every occasion. And it just kind of added up and added up. And we talked about this following the last win over the Charlotte Hornets. Yes, it's the lowly Hornets. I get it. But the lowly Hornets, they had contributed to Miami's 10-game losing streak. And Miami kind of reignited something during that win, figuring out how to win. Without that win against the Hornets, I don't know that they're able to win tonight. If they lost again to the Hornets, they probably would have just said, oh, we can't come back from this. But instead, they found a way at every opportunity to push Golden State, to find a way to kind of distance themselves, to add to a lead that was shrinking, and then just pile on and pile on. An incredible performance for this Miami Heat team. I'm really impressed.
And every time they would go a couple of possessions, they managed, and maybe Golden State would score once or twice and start cutting into that. Miami every time managed to get that relief bucket, whether it was Tyler Hero or Andrew Wiggins, maybe Davion Mitchell creating a steal and score in transition or whatever it was. And that was what was really missing during the 10-game losing streak, is like that would just snowball. It'd be, instead of 2 empty possessions, it would be 3, 4, 5, 6. And they would just be out of sorts completely. And in this game, they just found ways against, no Steph Curry, a very good Warriors defense. A very good Warriors defense for the season. And they didn't play well in this game, but you got to give a lot of credit to the Miami Heat for they could have come out flat. They could have done the whole, we're too we're too revved up on the emotions and we got to try to bring it all the way down and then come out flat. And I asked Eric Spoelstra about this after the game. I said, is that a skill to be able to kind of figure this out with the emotions, acknowledging that it's there and figuring out what it goes? And he even said, look, I think that you have to toe the line. You have to, it's a razor's edge of, if you're too emotional, you're kind of rabid and out of sorts and uncontrolled. And then if you try to dial it back too much, you come out flat. And they figured out a way to kind of walk that line the right way. On the flip side, I thought Jimmy Butler, I was a little surprised by his performance in this game, but maybe I shouldn't have been. Because Jimmy's whole thing always is, I'm too cool for school. And he came out a little too cool for school. Oh, this game doesn't matter, and I'm watching the tribute video, and that's kind of nice and whatever. And then, he just kind of does the thing that Heat fans have seen him do when he's not totally engaged, which is pass up open shots, stand in the corner. He took 12 shots in this game, right? Yeah, 12 shots. Moses Moody took 13. Brandon Podziemski took 16. Jonathan Kuminga, who isn't even playing well lately, took 10 shots in this game, almost as much as Jimmy Butler. And this is a very similar trend to the stuff that we used to complain about when Jimmy Butler was in Miami. I'm not saying it was a bad trade. I'm not trying to make any big takeaways from it, but this was how we were used to seeing Jimmy Butler play in Kaseya Center.
Yeah, it's not the macro view. It's the fact that he was so out of sorts on a night when you probably expected him, and I know I certainly did, to be a lot more focused. I thought he was going to be matching Miami's energy, or at least what we saw from Miami tonight. I didn't think Miami was capable of this. So they've impressed me. But to the flip side of that, Jimmy came out a lot flatter than I thought he would, because I thought he would want to make a statement. Like he would want to show him, you messed up. And he's used this. He's like,
I thought it was going to be like Minnesota Timberwolves practice Jimmy Butler. That's what I was expecting. Maybe not 40 points, not Michael Jordan against the Milwaukee Bucks Jimmy Butler, but like 24 points, 15 rebounds, like 12 assists,
key
just
possessions,
like 4 steals. Yeah.
To your question to Eric Spoelstra, like Jimmy has made a career of harnessing those emotions. He fuels that. I've made the point before, and maybe I've belabored it a little bit too much, but like players need something to motivate them over the course of an 82-game season and even in the playoffs. And it's all about slights and perceived slights. Like I know maybe this is just kind of framing it and with Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, and everybody remembers how it became obvious how much he needed something to just make him the fearful assassin that he was.
Right.
And just to kind of motivate him. It's like, oh, you didn't say good morning, or you said good morning to me the wrong way. Well, guess what? I'm going to drop 40 on you. Like you couldn't win, but that's what he does. And Jimmy has followed that same path. Like he hasn't always been the best regular season player because the regular season doesn't always matter to him. And it's not always so easy to kind of manufacture these perceived slights in order to use that as fuel. But he's always found motivation, especially on a night like tonight, you figured he would want to show up Pat, that he'd want to show up the whole team, that he'd have something to bark at, that he'd yell at Bam Adebayo, that he'd look over at Spo and said, "You go use Tyler over me," etc. Like we didn't
Right.
see any of that. He looked
No.
humbled. He looked kind of shaken. He looked like he was kind of scared of the
I think
moment.
he
to be
shut
honest with you.
down. I think
Yeah, he did.
I think he shut down the emotions. Right. It's the Heat finally the thing I've been begging them to do. Let the emotions in. Feel it. Feel your pain. Feel something. Bleed your own blood. It's okay. And then harness it. Use it. And
Right.
Jimmy Butler didn't. Jimmy Butler said, "I'm going to shut everything off. I'm not going to feel the weight of this moment." And and I don't even necessarily blame him for that. That's a totally human thing that you don't want to be encountering right now because of everything and how all of it went down. But look, I do think that Jimmy Butler did send some kind of message to the Miami Heat, specifically before the game even started. We're going to talk about that next and get to some credit cookies after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like watching basketball live. The energy, the crowd, the sound of sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, well, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. Their easy ticket shopping makes things so much simpler. I just checked the Game Time app, and there are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. Game Time Picks even highlights super deals, giving you the best pricing for your buck. And with their seat views before you buy, there's no surprise fees and a lower price guarantee. You can book with total confidence. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Plus. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. But again, create an account and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team is a free daily newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter. One stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. Before we get to the credit cookies here, David, just a quick little rundown of everything we saw tonight, because I think it's important to kind of get the context of all the things that happened on and off the court and around the court.
Yeah.
So get to the arena. We are alerted that there is going to be a tribute video, and it's going to be around 7:29, right before tip-off. And this was going to be a clear-cut tip-off because the game was national televised on TNT, so we're going to get that 7:30 tip-off for thereabouts. So we get that tribute video. And during the intros, Biamonte did do the whole full Jimmy Butler enunciation, right? And Jimmy Butler's sitting down on the bench, watches the tribute video, and then gets up, waves to the crowd. And during his introduction, I would describe it as about 50-50 cheers and boos.
Yep.
And I'm going to tell you, I was really surprised in that moment by how many boos there were. We did the poll yesterday, and it was like, about 68% of our poll voters said 68% cheers, 33%, whatever the math is, 32% might be booing him. And it was way closer to 50-50. Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't think that the fans would carry the grudge as much as they have. Like even to Jimmy's points recently to media, where he kind of deflected some of the blame. He accepted some of it, but he also said, you know what, you've got to look at Pat Riley in the front office. I mean, I'm not fully responsible for the way things played out. I don't think, based on what I saw tonight or what we heard tonight, like I guess the majority of Heat fans in attendance, my thought was that they were going to focus more about all the winning that Jimmy helped carry this team to. The past few seasons where he was phenomenal and a great player and embodied everything about Heat culture. And instead, they kind of just looked at the last few weeks and this losing streak and the fact that he kind of gave up on the team. And I think that's what was really inspiring those booms is that, you know, you could say whatever you want to. Like this Heat fan base is pretty critical of this team, and for good reason. They've been a playing team for a number of seasons. They haven't played great basketball, despite the fact that they've gone on some runs. They haven't been very, very good during the regular season. But to give up on this team, like that's an insult to them. That's a slap in the face, and that's what they took personally. And so that's what manifested in those boos tonight. So yeah, absolutely surprising to me, but whatever.
get
Maybe
it.
that
Like,
threw
I
off
just,
Jimmy. Maybe that threw off Jimmy more than we expect.
It did throw off Jimmy, and it's a great point. I get. I was wrong though. I was flatly wrong about how fans. And by the way, I don't blame fans at all for booing.
no,
I'm not going to tell fans whether to cheer or boo. I was just wrong because I thought I was just surprised. I thought that
me too.
I thought it was the online fan that was reading all these quotes and finding all these perceived slights and reading between and just doing all this stuff, where the casual Heat fan who's just buying a ticket just to show up to this game. Plus, it's against the Warriors. They're a team that travels really well. So like but there was. I didn't hear any. I saw Warriors fans. I didn't hear any Warriors fans, and maybe that's just because Steph wasn't playing. I don't know, but it was every time Jimmy Butler touched the ball in this game,
booed.
He was relentlessly booed. So great job, Heat fans. I mean, this is, to me, this was an us against them feeling that I haven't felt in a long time, where after Jimmy Butler, it was kind of a victim mentality with this Heat team. Oh, you know what? It kind of sucks what happened. And they would never admit that, and I don't even think they fully realized that, but that's just how they were acting, where this was the first game on national TV where everything was about Jimmy, Jimmy, Jimmy. This was an us against them moment, and they really embraced it, and I think the Heat fans really embraced it too. And so as soon as that feeling was out there and it was palpable in the arena, they responded accordingly, and they said, you know what, screw it, booing them. There was a guy behind me that just started screaming at the Heat to rip Jimmy Butler's head off.
Nice.
And I was like, all right, like, we're here, we're back, baby, like, let's go. Back to the. So then we get to the pre-tip portion of this, and all eyes were on Jimmy Butler. Was he going to dap up his teammates? What was that going to be? Only Alec Burks. He only dapped up Alec Burks, who was the guy he was shoulder to shoulder with during the pregame tip. Didn't even look in Bam's direction. Didn't look in Tyler Hero's direction. Even during the shooting warm-ups, Bam and Jimmy Butler were shooting at the same time. They never looked at each other. So fascinating stuff there.
K-Love did get some love from Jimmy. Like Jimmy
not surprising.
Came over
Kevin Love and Alec Burks are two of the most liked guys in the NBA. It is not
older
surprising
veterans.
at all
They've
to
been
me
through
that
it. There's no grudge there. They don't care one way or the other. They're collector check guys at this point. They're not making waves. They don't have any allegiances to the front office. They're not the future either. Like Bam and Tyler, that's the future, and that's the future that Jimmy said, no, I don't like this future. I don't like the way this is playing out. I don't want to be a third guy to these two players in particular, which is partly why he asked out also. So
Bam, the game starts. Bam dunks on Jimmy Butler within the first few minutes of the game. The crowd loses
Draymond Green.
So punches Draymond Green in the face or something. I don't know what happened, and then dunks on Jimmy Butler. Comes in, slides in front of him. Bam dunks on him. There's another moment in the second half where Bam had the ball in transition. Jimmy Butler, he makes a business decision that time. He's like, I'm not getting dunked on twice by this guy.
I've seen this before.
Jimmy Butler gets called for a 5-second violation while in front of the Heat bench. In the first quarter. I thought that was interesting.
Larson must have loved that moment there. Like, you could tell that's another guy who probably was riled up about the whole thing.
Miami goes up by 20 points. That lead gets cut down to 8 with a minute left in the third quarter. Tyler Hero makes a floater, then creates an open 3 from the corner for Davion Mitchell, and then that pushes the lead back to 13. Let's put a pin in the Tyler Hero conversation here until we get to credit cookies. But he makes also 2 huge 3-pointers in the fourth quarter to help put that game away. Both teams clear the bench with a few minutes left, so this thing was over. A ton of garbage time, and then Jimmy Butler at the end of this walks off the court and straight to the visitors' locker room, completing the task of never talking or interacting virtually with anybody on the Heat side for the entire game.
Strange.
Also can't say I'm right. Exactly. Not surprised either. But David, that brings us to the tastiest segment of Locked On Heat.
2 games in a row. A lot of calories over the last couple of nights here. After a 10-game losing streak, it's great to be back on a win streak. Who thought that was possible? But
can we knock this out in 2 minutes? Just give me your cookies, and then I want to get to my Bam point and Tyler point.
I'm gonna try my best, because there's 6 players that I think deserve credit cookies tonight, and you mentioned one of them, a very unsuspecting player thrust into the starting role. That's Alec Burks. He starts us off with 1 credit cookie, filled in admirably for Duncan Robinson. He had the chutzpah. He got it done. 17 points for him. Hit from the corner, taking some big shots. Looked fluid in doing so. He's had some on and off nights.
Revenge game for Alec Burks?
Production. I don't know. He played for Golden State, right? We kind of overlooked that too. There are a lot of players who kind of had ties to that organization there. Even Slow-Mo was pretty effective, although he does not get a credit cookie. But one for Alec Burks, one for Andrew Wiggins, who shot poorly but hit some nice shots here and there, but was everywhere else. He was manic. He was just following guys down, chasing guys out, blocking or altering shots, doing everything, doing all the little things. I don't think we've seen this kind of production. And I think it's one of the things that I wanted to see from Wiggins. I didn't necessarily want to see over the last few games of the season the production that we've gotten from him. Like he's been massive in terms of his scoring.
Yeah.
But tonight we saw all the other little things that he's capable of doing.
Couple steals and he blocked a 3-pointer.
Game changers. Yes, he
yeah,
did. Yes,
real defensive swing plays. That's the two-way stuff, right? It's 30 points, 42 points, and in this game when Bam and some other guys had it going, he's like, I'll take care of this defensively.
Exactly. One credit cookie also for Davion Mitchell. You mentioned him, but I thought he had a lot of nice momentum. Not only did he play well defensively, but I think he just brought a lot of energy, had a couple of nice transition buckets, just really a good 3-pointer also. So he looked really effective.
He's like a dog. And I mean this in like the best possible way, where he wasn't involved with any of this stuff, but he sensed that his teammates were emotional. And he's like, all right, we're going to be emotional about this. Yeah, I'll be emotional about this too. Like, I'm in. What do we need? What do you need me to do? I got this. And like, he was right there with them.
On their behalf. It was great. Yeah, it was phenomenal. Like he's sensing that energy and saying, I don't know what this Jimmy guy did before, because obviously he was traded. He was acquired after. Yeah, exactly. I hate him too. So he went in there and he came up with some anger and he used it to his credit. So he was phenomenal. Kel'el Ware, I think, was kind of an unsung player too. Some 100%. Nice rebounding, some nice altered shots at the rim, blocking shots. Like he was really, really effective. You could see they had no answer for his size, and he was clearly making things very difficult for Jimmy, who I don't think anticipated Ware to be this effective. But
no, and they were putting. Golden State kept putting smalls on Kel'el Ware, and Kel'el Ware kept getting into that dunker spot, and he did a great job moving around and manipulating that dunk. He didn't just stand there on the baseline. He was doing stuff. He was really impactful. I was really impressed with him. And
then 3 credit cookies apiece for Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero. It was difficult. I didn't want to spread it this thin. Like I think they deserved more. Bam in particular, who was just massive and was just doing all the little things, scoring, shooting from the perimeter. Like he was phenomenal. And I wouldn't want to give him just 3, but because I have to give so many other players credit cookies, I think they just get 3 on the night, but they get 3 apiece. So that wraps up credit cookies.
The Bam thing here, we haven't spent nearly enough time on him. We're going to do that when we come back. Plus, get to your listener questions after this here on Locked On Heat. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show, like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Bam was tremendous.
He was.
I loved the focus and the intensity that he was playing with. And it's at the point now where he wasn't just doing it for him. That was for Heat fans who felt scorned by Jimmy Butler. That was a rallying cry of a game by Bam Adebayo. And if you can't appreciate Bam at this point after this game, I don't know what to tell you. He did that for you guys. Like that was the us against them mentality that makes this Miami Heat fan base special. When it's at its best, that's the Miami sports fan base. That goes back to like the Hurricanes of the 80s, the Catholics versus the convicts. Like this is in the soil here in Miami. And Bam Adebayo is of that, right? Like he is of that. And he harnessed all the emotion that we were talking about, and he did that. He was not going to let this team get embarrassed by the guy who walked away. He was not going to let this organization feel that. He wasn't going to let this fan base feel that. And he came out and was the most dominant two-way player in this game. He outplayed Jimmy Butler thoroughly. Outscored him 23-11, guarded him from the tip. He was his main defender in this game, and he never really let Jimmy Butler get off. That was more than just basketball, David. That was emotions. That was tapping into the fan base, and it's one of those games where if you're a Heat fan, it makes you proud of this homegrown star player. So that was for the Heat fans, and if you can't appreciate that, then I just don't know what to tell you anymore. And I know that I'm talking to a minority here, but this is Bam. He is a Miami Heat player. He's a captain for a reason.
I think you misspoke too. He was a plus 23, but he finished actually with 27 points on the night. So he was phenomenal in terms of his scoring production. And look, I'm loath to make the same mistake that we did following the Cleveland Cavaliers game, where you kind of pointed to that and said, that maybe this was a turning point for Bam and things of that sort. Like we were both bullish on Bam's ability to kind of take his game to the next level. That hasn't manifested. We don't know what to expect from Bam in terms of his overall production, but
it was a moment, right? That was a moment.
Was. It should count for something. Like
it does.
This should mean something to fans that he
did
willing to do this. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think mostly, honestly, I don't know that he was doing it for them, and I'm fine with it. I think he was doing it for him. I think he hates Jimmy, or not hates Jimmy, like he's pissed off at him. Like he's
that was pride, right? Okay,
yeah.
You're right. Maybe I'm taking one step further more than I probably should here. He didn't do it for the Heat fans, probably, but indirectly he did. Right? That pride,
nice.
That is something that has been missing with this team for a very long time. And I would even say in the regular season for a few years now. Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely palpable. You could see how much this meant to him. He was just barking at people, drawing fouls, aggressive, tying it all together. And yeah, that could infuriate fans because it's like, well, why doesn't he do it every night? Well, it's hard to do this every night, for one. Secondly, he used the motivation the same way we just talked about Jimmy kind of using that motivation at several points throughout his stint here in Miami. I think Bam was able to do that tonight. And it's partly what makes him such a playoff gamer also, is that he kind of rises to those challenges typically, even if it's not the kind of production that fans would appreciate. The little things that he does, the block shots, the rebounds, the effort. Like, I mean, he defended Nikola Jokic as well as he could in the NBA Finals, even what was clearly a losing effort. And I think tonight you saw how much it meant to him and how personally he took Jimmy's departure as one of those slights. And so he was phenomenal tonight. Kudos to him for really showing out. And yeah, to provide Heat fans a little bit of joy, to use that term, one that's probably been overused, not maybe as overused as Heat culture, but it's been used a lot lately.
Yeah, and we have a question from Antonio. So we're going to get to our Locked On Heat Insider community questions here. You could submit these questions with the link in the show notes. Sign up free for 14 days. He writes in, we still can't beat a good team with no Steph, and Jimmy didn't care at all. The Warriors shot 23% from three. Miami shot 68%. Plus, Bam plus aggression equals Miami win or close game. He needs to always be the first option. Why is he not on some nights? Whatever. The can't beat the good team with no Steph. Okay, that's fine. If you want to poke a hole in this game and because there was no Steph Curry, like, go ahead. I'm not gonna that. That was a big deal. Whatever. But this was more than basketball. It was the pride with which this team played. That's what really mattered from this game. It was that pride that we just haven't seen from this team in so long, and their ability to rise to this moment. And that's what I'm saying. This is have the nice thing. Have the nice thing. This was a moment, right? This is the most important game of the Miami Heat season, and they rose to the occasion, and their best player, their franchise player, Bam Adebayo, rose to the occasion more than anybody else on that court in this game. It doesn't mean that he has to do that every single night. It's impossible in the NBA through an 82-game season, but for the most part, Bam is out there doing it, man. So like I said, whatever. Like, if you want to try to extrapolate this and be like, hey, you should play with playoff intensity in every game, including in March, it's not going to happen. So whatever. I
texted you before the game, hours before the game, that this was Miami's playoffs, because really, I mean, regardless of what they do in the play-in tournament, it's always going to feel like it wasn't really enough, or they're not clearly a contender this year. But the weight of this game, what mattered, like the significance of this, all of this was a huge degree, and they felt it. They were able to manipulate it to their benefit, and they played a phenomenal game. And Bam was the leader in that regard. And I think kind of speaks highly to who he is as a person and a player, that he was doing this for his team, for himself, and maybe even sometimes for the fans.
Speed round through these final questions. Drew writes in, is this the turning point for the Heat to make some type of realistic run into the 8th spot in the East? Malachi writes in, can this team build momentum off the win, catch the Hawks for the 7th seed? They are right now 31-41, right? I think I have that right. They're 4.5 games back of Atlanta, 3.5 games back of Orlando for the 7 and 8 spots. They're not, with 9 games left, they're not catching them. I think the best that the Heat could hope for is maybe catching Chicago. They're a game behind Chicago for that 9 spot, and then at least you're hosting that 9-10 game. If you're still
I don't think they're going to move up much in the standings. I think I agree with you that in the 9th seed is probably as far as they go, barring some kind of catastrophic falling apart by either Orlando or Atlanta, which doesn't seem likely. They're on their own win streaks as it happens to be, and I don't know if it's a turning point. Like, I'd like to say it is. I think they've rediscovered something over the last couple of games, how to win again And maybe they should have discovered that a couple games prior, where they couldn't have, maybe they could have let that 10-game losing streak maybe not go quite as long. But here you are, you're in the thick of it. No way to go but through and try to make the most of it. And I think they can use tonight's win and the emotional output to kind of fuel something. I'm going to stop short of saying that they're going to make any noise in the play-in tournament, or certainly even provide a challenge to a first seed or anything like that, if they're able to advance.
That's Cameron's question. Do you think that this win could jumpstart a run to the finish of the year strong? Obviously, the team is still far from a contender, but do you think that they could make it out of the play-in tournament, maybe put up a competitive series against the Cavs? Also, RIP to your team tank aspirations. First of all, not yet. Still got to make it out of the play-in tournament before you get out of the lottery there. This was the biggest game of the year. I'm good. I might end up regretting those words, but I'm good, man. I'm fine now.
I think that's a possibility. I'm not going to count on it. I wouldn't certainly bet on it, but I think if they're able to advance and they match up against Cleveland, I still think they would have been competitive. Like that game where Bam had, where they were just shy of winning against the very good team. That kind of showed me, and they've beat that team before earlier in the season. I think they will make the series challenging against Cleveland, just because, Bam does have that playoff experience. Tyler has that playoff experience, and a lot of those players have something to prove. And I think they could congeal at just the right time and find a way to make something happen. I could see it going 7, and that's a win. Like, they're not going to beat Cleveland. I would see that as a win. If they're able to advance out of the play-in tournament and stretch that series out to a 7-game series, I would see that as, you know what? I kind of like this squad. They showed a lot more heart than I thought they were capable of.
To your point, I think this can be a jump start into better basketball, and I maybe the bar is really low considering it was a 10-game losing streak. But what Andrew Wiggins has been able to provide this team, that as he's healthy and has gotten reacclimated, also not it's worth mentioning that his family is finally here. He's very close to his family. They finally kind of got back into Miami, so I think that's a big deal in terms of how he's operating and playing when he's out there. So I think this team is going to be better. In Charlotte, Golden State, you kind of got this emotional thing past. You're past it now. It'll be exciting to see what they can build on. And I'm not even really concerned with the standings. I just want to see what they kind of put together here. If they could put some quality basketball together, it makes you feel good about the product that we might be watching next year. Max writes in, am I overreacting to not wanting to retire Jimmy Butler's jersey after tonight and how he acted towards his former teammates? Max, I'm not going to tell you how to feel. If that's how you're feeling, I'm not going to tell you you're overreacting. I don't know that Jimmy Butler's jersey gets retired. I'm not totally 100% sure on that. Anyway,
I can't agree with that one. I think it has to be, like, for everything that we've said lately about Jimmy, and especially leading up to this game, despite his comments, despite his laissez-faire attitude about everything, and the fact that he burnt some bridge, or maybe not all of it, on his way out. I think jersey retirements are all about, Tim Hardaway hated Pat Riley and his organization after they got rid of him, and the constant complaining about the fat testing and the weigh-ins and Riley's tough practices and things of that sort, like that. That kind of got to him as a veteran player, and yet he's been as staunch a supporter of Heat culture in the front office as you could find, despite the bad blood. I think eventually, with the hindsight of his retirement, Jimmy will mellow out. Like, what's he going to carry that grudge for? Like, he's not going to care.
Will either side be motivated to extend that olive branch, or will they just say, you know what, it was a good 5 years and we don't necessarily have to get along? I don't know. I'm not. This is not even my own opinion on what should or shouldn't happen. I guess I'm not 100% sure that jersey gets retired. You're probably right. You look at the jerseys that are in their afters, you're like, yeah, Jimmy is one of the greatest players in franchise history. Nobody's debating that. I'm still not 100% that everybody's going to get there, but maybe I'm wrong.
Alonzo Mourning left as a free agent, and now he's a Heat lifer, and I didn't know that he was particularly close to Pat Riley, and they didn't win anything either.
But he came back, and
he did come back, and he was part of the finals run. Yes, I get that, but he was also an older player and not much of a factor. And that was a lot of Dwayne Wade.
But it's a humbling experience, and I don't know that Jimmy will ever go there. Is my point.
What if Jimmy signs like a 1-year vet minimum deal, just to, after his deal ends with with
To
let's
do
say
what?
who the next face of superstar.
To
and he
play
just
one
takes
last
the-
season in Miami?
One last season in Miami.
Yeah, but like that's okay. Then the fence the fence
fences
would
are
be
mended.
mended at that point. But I just don't really. Jimmy's a different cat, man. I don't
He is.
see him kind of doing that. Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. I don't know, but who knows. I know I'm gonna get attacked for this. I'm just telling people I'm not 100% sure that the jersey is going up. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. It's not an anti-Jimmy Butler take. It's more of just an observation of the two characters and the parties that are at play here. That said,
There you go.
what a night. The Heat win the Jimmy Butler reunion. They play with pride. They really show something. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.